r/ask Reddit, posted by Reddit user 1v1bra. Redditors who experienced glitch in the Matrix. What happened? Around 20 years ago, my class was coming back from a school camp. We stopped off at a picnic area next to a large bay for snacks, toilet breaks, etc. A couple of my friends and a teacher went down to the water's edge and looked out. That's when we all saw what looked like a fully floating flag, flying, moving, steam coming out, and an all-Civil War ironclad about a mile out. It was a cool sight. We talked amongst each other about how weird and cool it was, as the teacher couldn't believe that there were any left, let alone floating and operating. Then it was gone. Not as if we moved and we lost it. Like, gone. No steam trail where the boat was. Nothing. Remember how we all felt really uncomfortable for a few seconds, and then we shrugged it off and got back on the bus. I think about this every now and then as one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Civil War, maybe Victoria-era time traveler? Ghost ship? Probably not. Mirage? Maybe. Who knows? But it was weird. Don't know if this counts, but once I woke up to the radio turning on at night. It was on a random station and I heard people talking. After like 5 seconds I turned it off. I looked to see the plug was not plugged into the wall outlet at all. And it wasn't a radio that could have taken batteries either. I gave it a weird look. Nothing could have possibly turned that radio on and back off at complete random, with no power source. And what about the speakers? Those need powers too. That night weirded me out a bit. I still cannot really think of a possible way of how it could have happened. About the voices on the radio, they were just regular human voices of a radio station. No weird creepy 3 a.m. shit beyond the radio randomly turning on and off at night. Not sure if I would say this is a glitch in the Matrix, but sure as hell creepy. My dad's name is Mike. His brother's name is Bill. And at the time this happened, his father had passed away just a few weeks earlier. I was 10 years old sitting at home when the house phone rang, but I didn't pick it up out of laziness. We had one of those house phones where if you didn't pick it up and the caller left a message, you could hear the person making the message in real time on the phone speaker. The guy on the other end, whose voice we did not recognize, said, "Hey Mike, I'm at local restaurant with Bill and your dad. Was wondering if you wanted to come." I was freaked the fuck out and ran to tell my father, who listened to it and seemed just as creeped out. But regardless, he still called the number to see if it was some joke by a random guy who somehow knew all his family details. The phone number said it was invalid. The bell for the end of class rang like normal. We packed up and thanked the teacher on our way out. Everything seemed normal until less than 30 seconds later, another mate and I saw him leaving the teacher's staff, which was about 3 classrooms down. Now there was no way he would have been able to pass us at the classroom, which was located on a narrow balcony, about 4 meters wide. And like I said, he was still cleaning up his stuff when we left. When we saw him, we looked at each other, and I remember both of us being stumped as to how he got to the staff room, did whatever he was doing, and left before we even walked 10 meters from the classroom. We ended up shrugging it off, and thought maybe one of us missed him walking past us, which would have been basically impossible. A few months ago, I went with my grandmother to the grocery store. She had her keys for the house and her car on the same lanyard, so she picks me up. We get to the store and get what we need, and somehow, she loses her keys, so we think we drop them in the store. So we take turns running into the store, looking around and checking with managers to see if anyone picked them up. We called my aunt to get my grandmother home, and she said she found the keys on the office desk, lanyard and everything. It was the trippiest shit I've gone through, because we had an entire conversation about her lanyard while it was hanging from the car ignition, and somehow they got back to the house. This happened back when I was in high school, so like 2006, 2007 maybe, a while back. Normally, when I walked to school, I would stop by a Starbucks on my way to get myself a latte, chat with the cute barista, then head into school. This walk-in trip to Starbucks took me roughly 30 to 45 minutes from the time I left to the time I got into the school building. One day I promised myself I would just head right into school because of a meeting for drama class that I needed to get to, and I wanted to prove to my friends that I wasn't addicted to coffee. I headed out my usual time, 7:30. I got to the end of my street and blinked, and the next thing I knew I was with my friends, waiting for the meeting to start, drinking a coffee. It was only 7:45. When I finally snapped into it, my friends were making a joke that I obviously left the house early to get my coffee. I checked my phone for proof. There was a message from me at 7:30 to my friend, saying, "I'm leaving, I'll see you in a bit." Even if I hadn't stopped for the coffee, the walk was still closer to 25 to 30 minutes. I'm not sure how I made it in 15. The next day I stopped at the Starbucks, and the usual barista was there asking where I had been the day before because he'd missed me. I was very confused and asked what he meant because I had obviously stopped for a coffee, and he said no, because he had anticipated me coming in and made my coffee ahead of time, but I never came in to get it. I then told my friends, and we were very confused about the whole thing. We still are. I once drove down my aunt's street for a party, and her house, which I had been to about 20 times, just disappeared, like it was no longer on the street. I got spooked out so badly I turned around to go home. The freaky thing is, my sister called me and asked if I was okay. Apparently, her and my uncle happened to be outside of the house when I pulled into the driveway. They waved at me, and then I just backed out and drove off. But from my point of view, I never stopped. I just drove up and down the street, unable to find a house I've visited numerous times. I have no explanation. It's the weirdest thing. Maybe just a glitch? I'm not sure. There was a somewhat popular game in Mexico called Regula, in which you toss a coin to make it bounce against the wall, and you win if your coin is the one that ends up closer to the wall after bouncing. I was playing this game with two friends when one of them tossed his coin and it literally went through the wall. It didn't clink or make a noise whatsoever. We looked at each other in disbelief, and I touched the wall to the point where the coin should have hit, kind of fearing that my hand would go through it as well. But no, it was solid brick. We went to check the other side of the wall, but the coin was nowhere to be found. We stopped playing Regula, and we tried to find a reasonable explanation, to no avail. I worked night shifts at a warehouse with this dude called Ashley, and usually 3 or 4 others. This one night I'm sat upstairs in the office on the computer, and I see Ashley come running past down the hall, through the office window. He's quite tall, average build, and has tattoos and piercings. As well, he usually grows his hair out long, and then gets a buzz cut every 2 or 3 months. I see him sprint past and instantly notice he's gotten a haircut, which he didn't have the previous day. And it's definitely him because I saw his tattoos. It's nothing strange, but about 3 hours later, when I'm down in the warehouse, he approached me, and he has long hair again, the same as he did the previous day. In addition, he has a completely different outfit as he did earlier. I was so taken aback that it took me a few seconds to respond to what he was saying, as I couldn't believe my eyes. I know for a fact I saw him earlier with a shaved head, and it wasn't a dream or anything. The very next night, he walks into the warehouse with a fresh buzz cut and is wearing the same outfit as before. I've thought of so many possible outcomes as to what reasonably happened, and I can't think of any. I know this isn't the craziest story on earth, but it's what happened to me. So what I'm about to tell you may be perceived as my guardian angels or something, but to me, it's a glitch in the matrix. Maybe the creator's keeping close tabs on me? When it started, I was around 8. I was in the mall with my older sister who was taking me back to school shopping. We were in Foot Locker looking at shoes. Typical teenage her, left to go see some clothes next door, so I had time to look and pick out some shoes. Being a bigger kid, I always had difficulty finding my size at the time. As I was looking, a couple came up behind me, no older than maybe 30, and they said, "Are you a shoe kind of kid?" I was a little confused, partially by the question, and partially because I don't usually talk with strangers. I said I like shoes, and they asked, "Well, what shoes are cool? We're looking for our son. He's around your age." I nervously pointed out the Nikes I was looking at, and I thought they were pretty cool. They smiled and they asked, "Are you buying shoes?" I just kind of nodded and tried not to get too close. And they said, "Well, we can buy them for you if you want." My whole body shivered. I knew not to talk to strangers, let alone accept anything. I said no thank you and began to leave the store. I found my sister and told her the whole thing. We shook it off and moved on for the day. Now, this is where the glitch starts. About 2 years later, I see the same couple at the same mall as I'm with my friends. They stop and say hello. Me being a bit bigger now, I say hello back. And they smile and talk to me about how I was, like we've been in contact for 2 years. Then they mentioned they were going to get shoes for their kid, the 8-year-old. At the time I shrugged it off, but as the years passed I saw them continuously. I saw them at 8, 10, 13, 15, and 17. Every time they were polite and sweet, they seemed to want to help me if I ever needed anything, and every time I felt so unusual. Not scared, just unnerved, I guess. The last time I saw them when I was 17, but that was the oddest encounter. For backstory, I had my oldest son earlier that year. Yeah, I was an early parent. And I was walking in that same mall, and I saw the same people. Mind you, I was alone looking for some clothes, and they came up as usual and said hello, except this time the woman put her hand on my shoulder, like a mother would do to her son, and instead of small talk, she looked into my eyes and said, "I know it's difficult right now. I understand your pain and frustrations, but you're going to be okay. Trust me." She smiled, and for the first time I realized how beautiful she was, and how her and her husband never aged. But most importantly, how the shoes they were either shopping for or had picked up never been bigger than a foot size for a kid who would be around 8 years old. I don't know what to make of this. Like I said, they were always pleasant, and to be honest, things have been better as time has gone. I'm 26 now, and I haven't seen them since that last time. In a way, I miss the encounters. Who knows who they are or what they are. I just hope they got the right pair of shoes.